Hi, join Corley Sports Coffee once again. And as I continue the series, I'm going to not only be adding new information, but also breaking down into a little bit more detail the information that's in part one. So if you haven't seen part one, that's the overall scope and building the foundation and the groundwork for all the things that we're going to be talking about moving forward. Now, in this session, part two, we're going to be talking about the perception gap. And very quickly, I wanted to give you an overview of how and why perception gaps occur. What like literally goes on in the mind. And this is like kind of how people operate 101. So for those of you who missed the part about what a perception gap is, it is when you assess a person based on a, let's say, example, a particular score of a 3, and they give it a 4 or 5. So your perception and what you scored it versus their perception and what they scored it, that's what causes the gap. And in this particular video, I want to share with you exactly how and why that occurs. Now, again, I want you to be thinking about, because one of the questions that was posed in session one was, well, basically, are your performance assessments designed to be objective and subjective? So why does the perception gap matter? Well, it matters if you have your performance management designed as particularly subjective, because subjective is based on people's feelings, tastes, opinions, and their perception. And then from that, they formulate an opinion. So the question is your performance assessments any component of it based on perception, or is it based on measurable fact, which is objective? Okay, so what I asked you to do in the first video was to begin to think about that and review your current process and tools and see, are there perception gaps built into it? So, how and why does a perception gap occur? This is what happens. In the brain, we process events and experiences. Now, everyone's brain is a customized filter, a customized interpreter. I call it also too a customized lens. Now, what's in that lens? What comprises that lens? Your personal wiring, how your brain is naturally wired, is going to catch and see and interpret things differently. And with that comes what you believe, your beliefs, your values, your collective life experience to date, your life conditioning, that means habitually what's been reinforced over and over again, and your current knowledge. That comprises your customized filter. Now, here's the thing. Two people can have the exact same experience and interpret it completely different ways. And that is the danger of the performance gap, the perception gap in performance, because now you have to explain it. You have to justify it if there are specific differences and market differences that are difficult to explain or align. So, part of performance management, if you have a perception gap or perception gaps built into your design, is part of the discussion is aligning perception so people understand where you're coming from so they can see what you see. And that can be very difficult, particularly when we do performance management or we do appraisals and reports haphazardly, done at the last minute, rushed through with little thought. That's pretty common. So now you have to explain a perception gap and help get alignment on how and get them to see what you see. This is where the ill will, the mistrust, all those discomfort, demoralization begins to occur. So, whenever you have a perception based on your values and all that, you give that experience or event, you give it a story. You provide a storyline, a line of thinking as you're experiencing whatever, you're providing a interpretation. And that interpretation is the story you're giving it The way you're describing the experience to yourself, that's what's becoming your story and your interpretation. That creates a point of view, a perspective, and that also, whether you realize it or not, creates your reality about your situation, the whatever situation you're experiencing or interpretation, and also becomes your personal truth. And so that creates one of the biggest challenges in performance management is when you have two different realities and two different truths that are now in competition with each other. So in summary, a perception gap is how we see it, how our customized filter interprets it by the story we give it and the meaning we give to it. And that becomes our customized point of view, our lens, and also to our personal reality and our personal truth. So it's super important that you know this. So as you're working with your performance management, whether you call it appraisals, whatever you call it, I'm recommending you don't call it appraisals. But when you're trying to create the not only create the performance management plans, but then how you assess and measure subjective and objective, and understanding the perception gap and how you get there is critical to effective performance management. Okay, I'd love to know your comments below. Have you experienced perception gaps? What have they been like, not only as a manager, but also too as someone giving feedback, but also receiving feedback. Tell us about your experience with it, so that we can help people become more aware of it and also help change it. Okay, until next time.